The dust cloud rose behind the black carriage like a warning, and Olivia Sanders knew before it stopped at her gate that everything she had fought to keep was about to slip through her fingers. She stood on the porch of the modest ranch house her father had built with his own hands, watching three men in expensive suits step down onto the dry earth of her land, and her heart hammered against her ribs with a fury that matched the late afternoon sun beating down on North Platte, Nebraska, this scorching July day in 1882. The tallest of them, a man with silver hair and a face like carved granite, carried a leather folder that she knew contained papers meant to strip away her birthright, her home, everything that mattered. "Miss Sanders," the silver-haired man called out, his voice smooth as oil but just as slippery. "I am Theodore Whitmore, representing the Western Railway Company. We have business to discuss." Olivia wiped her hands on her worn calico dress, feeling the weight of exhaustion in her bones. At 23 years old, she had been running this ranch alone for 8 months since her father's death, fighting against drought, rustlers, and now this, the worst threat of all. The railway company had been circling her property like vultures for over a year, wanting the water rights to the creek that ran through her land, the only reliable water source for miles around. "I have nothing to discuss with you, Mr. Whitmore," she called back, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "I've told your company repeatedly that this land is not for sale." Whitmore smiled, but there was no warmth in it. His two companions flanked him as they approached the porch, their boots crunching on the gravel path. "I am afraid circumstances have changed, Miss Sanders. You see, we have discovered certain irregularities in your father's land claim, debts that were never settled. Legal complications that, I am sorry to say, give the railway company certain rights." "That is a lie," Olivia said, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "My father paid every debt he owed. This land is mine, legally and rightfully." "Perhaps we should discuss this inside," Whitmore said, already mounting the porch steps without waiting for an invitation. "It would be more comfortable for everyone involved." Before Olivia could protest, the three men had pushed past her into her home, and she felt a spike of outrage mixed with helplessness. She had no one to turn to, no family left, and the sheriff in town was known to be in the railway company's pocket. Her nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and by the time she could get help, these men could do whatever they pleased. Inside her modest parlor, Whitmore spread papers across her father's old oak table, the same table where she had eaten breakfast that very morning. "As you can see here, Miss Sanders, there are outstanding debts totaling $3,000. Your father signed a promissory note 5 years ago, and with interest accumulated, the railway company has purchased this debt. We are prepared to be reasonable. Sign over the land and water rights, and we will consider the debt settled. Refuse, and we will be forced to take legal action that will leave you with nothing." Olivia stared at the papers, her vision blurring with tears she refused to shed. The signature did look like her father's, but she knew in her heart it was a forgery. Her father had been many things, but he was never careless with money, never reckless with their future. This was a scheme, a calculated plot to steal what they could not buy honestly. "I need time to consult a lawyer," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There is no time," Whitmore said, producing a fountain pen from his vest pocket. "Sign now, or we will have the sheriff here within the hour to escort you off this property. You are young, Miss Sanders. You can start over somewhere else, but this land, this water, it belongs to Progress now." The room felt like it was closing in around her. Olivia reached for the pen with a trembling hand, feeling like a traitor to her father's memory, to every dream they had shared. Her fingers touched the cool metal just as the front door burst open with a crash that made everyone in the room jump. A man stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the bright afternoon sun, tall and broad-shouldered, with dust covering his worn leather vest and faded denim pants. He swept off his hat, revealing dark hair and eyes that blazed with an intensity that made Olivia's breath catch in her throat. "This lady does not look like she wants to sign anything," he said, his voice low and dangerous, with a subtle drawl that marked him as someone who had spent years under open skies. "Who the hell are you?" Whitmore demanded, his composure cracking for the first time. "Quinn Dalton," the stranger said, stepping fully into the room. "I was passing through, looking for work when I heard raised voices. Seems like I arrived at just the right time." Whitmore's face reddened. "This is private business, Cowboy. Get out before you find yourself in trouble you cannot handle." Quinn moved further into the room, and Olivia noticed the easy confidence in his movements, the way his hand rested near the revolver on his hip. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with weathered skin that spoke of years spent working cattle drives and sleeping under stars. There was something in his eyes, though, something that suggested he had seen more than his share of men like Whitmore, trying to take advantage of decent people. "Miss," Quinn said, turning his attention to Olivia and effectively ignoring the three railway men. "Is this something you want to do? Sign these papers?" The directness of the question, the genuine concern in his voice, broke something loose inside Olivia's chest. "No," she whispered, then louder. "No, I do not want to sign. These men are trying to steal my land with forged documents and lies." Quinn nodded once, then before anyone could react, he crossed to the table and scooped up all the papers Whitmore had spread out. The railway man lunged forward with a shout, but Quinn was faster, tearing the documents cleanly in half, then in half again, letting the pieces flutter to the floor like confetti. "You fool," Whitmore roared. "Those were legal documents. You have just destroyed property of the Western Railway Company." "Looked like trash to me," Quinn said calmly, positioning himself between Olivia and the three men. "And now, I think you gentlemen should leave this lady's property." One of Whitmore's companions reached inside his jacket, but Quinn's hand moved to his gun with a speed that made it clear he would win any contest they wanted to start. "I would not do that if I were you," Quinn said quietly. "I've had a long ride and my patience is running thin." For a long moment, the room crackled with tension. Olivia could hardly breathe, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. Finally, Whitmore straightened his jacket with sharp, angry movements. "This is not over," he hissed. "The railway company will have this land. We will be back with the sheriff and federal marshals if necessary. And you," he pointed at Quinn, "you have made a powerful enemy today." "I will take my chances," Quinn replied. The three men stormed out, their footsteps heavy on the wooden porch, and moments later the sound of their carriage rattling away filled the sudden silence. Olivia's legs gave out, and she sank into one of the kitchen chairs, her whole body shaking with reaction. Quinn knelt beside her, his expression concerned. "Are you all right, miss?" "I do not know," Olivia admitted, looking at him properly for the first time. His eyes were hazel, she noticed, with flecks of gold that caught the light streaming through the window. His face was handsome in a rugged way, with a strong jaw and a small scar above his left eyebrow. "You just made yourself a target for very dangerous men. The railway company does not forgive, and they do not forget." "Then it is a good thing I was not planning on asking for their forgiveness," Quinn said with a slight smile. He stood and picked up his hat from where he had set it on the counter. "I should probably introduce myself properly. Quinn Dalton, out of Colorado originally, but I have been drifting for the past few years. Working cattle drives, ranch hand jobs, wherever the work takes me. Olivia Sanders, she replied, finding her voice again. This is or was my father's ranch. He died last winter, and I have been trying to keep it running on my own. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I suppose I am not doing a very good job if railway men can just walk in and try to steal it from under me. That is not your fault, Quinn said firmly. Men like that prey on people in difficult situations. They think they can get away with it because they have money and connections. He looked around the modest house, taking in the neat but worn furnishings, the carefully tended touches that marked it as a home. You said those documents were forged. They must be, Olivia said. My father never would have taken on that kind of debt without telling me. We worked this ranch together after my mother died when I was 12. He taught me everything, treated me like a partner, not just a daughter. If there had been debts, I would have known. Quinn nodded slowly. The problem is, forgery or not, they will be back, and next time they might bring the law with them, bought and paid for or not. I know, Olivia whispered, feeling despair creeping back in. What am I supposed to do? I cannot fight the railway company. They have endless money, lawyers, and, like you said, the law in their pocket. She expected him to make sympathetic noises and then leave, to get away from her problems before they became his problems too. Instead, Quinn pulled out a chair and sat down across from her, his expression serious. You need help, he said simply. Someone who knows how to deal with this kind of situation, and it just so happens that I was looking for work when I rode up here. Olivia stared at him. You want to work here? After what just happened? Those men will come back, probably with guns and badges. You could be arrested or worse. I could, Quinn agreed, but I have never been good at walking away when someone needs help, and besides, I meant what I said. I am looking for work, and you clearly need a hand around here. How much land do you have? 400 acres, Olivia said, still trying to process what was happening. About 200 head of cattle, though I lost some over the winter. The creek runs through the eastern part of the property. That is what they really want, the water rights. Show me, Quinn said, standing up. Show me your land and let me see what we are dealing with. They spent the next 2 hours riding the property on horseback, Olivia on her father's old mare and Quinn on a beautiful bay gelding he had tied out front. As they rode, Olivia found herself relaxing despite the crisis hanging over her head. Quinn asked intelligent questions about the cattle, the grazing patterns, the condition of the fences. He had clearly spent years working ranches and knew what he was looking at. More than that, though, he listened when she talked. Really listened. Not the way most men did when a woman spoke about ranching, with that condescending patience that made it clear they thought she did not know what she was talking about. Quinn treated her observations and opinions with respect, nodding when she explained how she had been managing the herd on her own, complimenting her on the condition of the cattle considering she had been working solo. By the time they returned to the ranch house as the sun was setting, painting the Nebraska sky in shades of orange and purple, Olivia felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could actually keep her home. You have done a remarkable job here, Quinn said as they unsaddled the horses in the small barn. Your father would be proud. The words hit Olivia harder than she expected, and to her mortification, tears spilled down her cheeks. She turned away quickly, busying herself with removing the saddle, but Quinn had already seen. I am sorry, he said quietly. I did not mean to upset you. You did not, Olivia managed, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. It is just that nobody has said anything like that to me since he died. Everyone in town either ignores me or tells me I should sell and move back east, find a husband, stop pretending I can run a ranch on my own. You are the first person who has looked at what I have accomplished and seen anything worth praising." Quinn was quiet for a moment, then said, "The world is full of fools, Miss Sanders. You are doing something most men would struggle with, and you are doing it well. Do not let anyone tell you different." That night, Quinn made camp in the barn, refusing Olivia's offer of the spare room in the house. "Would not be proper," he said with a smile. "People talk, and you do not need that on top of everything else. Besides, I have slept in worse places than a clean barn." Olivia lay in her bed that night, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch, but feeling less alone than she had in months. Tomorrow the railway men would likely return, probably with reinforcements. The battle for her home was far from over. But for the first time since her father's death, she felt like she might have a fighting chance. The next morning, Olivia woke before dawn as always and was surprised to find Quinn already up and working. He had fed and watered the horses, fixed a broken board in the barn door, and was examining the fence line near the house when she came out with 2 cups of coffee. "You do not waste time," she said, handing him one of the cups. "Old habits," Quinn replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "My father always said the difference between a good ranch hand and a great one was what you did in the hours before the boss woke up." They stood together in the cool morning air, watching the sun rise over the prairie, and Olivia felt a strange contentment settle over her. It was broken moments later by the sound of approaching horses. "They are back already," she said, tension flooding through her body, but it was not the railway men. Instead, a single rider approached, an older man wearing a sheriff's star that glinted in the morning light. Olivia's heart sank. This was Sheriff Morton, and everyone knew he was in Whitmore's pocket. "Miss Sanders," Morton called out as he reined in his horse, "I am here on official business. I have a warrant for the arrest of a man named Quinn Dalton on charges of destruction of property and threatening behavior." Quinn stepped forward calmly. "Sheriff, those men were trying to force Miss Sanders to sign over her land with forged documents. I simply prevented a crime from taking place." "That is not how Mr. Whitmore tells it," Morton said, though he did not look entirely comfortable. "Look, son, I do not want trouble. You come with me peacefully and we will sort this all out in front of the judge." "And how long until I see this judge?" Quinn asked. "A day, a week, long enough for Miss Sanders to be forced off her land with nobody here to help her." Morton's expression confirmed that was exactly the plan. Olivia stepped forward, her fear transforming into anger. "Sheriff Morton, you know perfectly well what the railway company is trying to do. My father was friends with your father. He trusted you. Is this how you honor that friendship? By helping thieves and con men steal his daughter's inheritance." For a moment, shame flickered across Morton's weathered face. "Miss Sanders, I am sorry, but I have my orders. The law is the law." "Then the law is broken," Olivia said fiercely. "And you are broken too if you go along with this." Morton looked between them, clearly torn. Finally, he sighed heavily. "I will tell you what. I am going to ride back to town and file my report that I could not find this Quinn Dalton fellow. That will buy you maybe a day, 2 at most, before Whitmore sends federal marshals. Use that time to get yourself a good lawyer, Miss Sanders. Find proof those documents were forged. Because I cannot help you beyond this, and once the marshals come, there will not be anything anyone can do." He turned his horse and rode away, leaving Olivia and Quinn standing in stunned silence. "Well," Quinn said finally, "that was unexpected. Maybe there are still some good men left after all." "A day," Olivia said, her mind racing. "How am I supposed to find proof of forgery in a day? Even if I could get to a lawyer, which I cannot afford anyway, there is no time." Quinn was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Then he said, "Tell me about your father. Where did he do his banking? Who were his business associates? He used the First Bank of North Platte, Olivia said, and he kept meticulous records of every transaction, every contract. They are all in his desk in the house. Then that is where we start, Quinn said. If those documents were forged, there will be inconsistencies. Dates that do not match up, signatures that look different from other documents. We just need to find them. They spent the entire morning going through her father's papers, spreading them across the kitchen table and comparing signatures, dates, and financial records. Olivia's father had indeed been meticulous, and as they worked, a picture began to emerge. "Look at this," Quinn said, holding up two documents side by side. "This is a contract your father signed with a cattle buyer 3 years ago, and this is the promissory note the railway company claims he signed 5 years ago. The signatures are similar, but not identical. See here the way the S in Sanders curves. It is different in each one." Olivia leaned in close, her shoulder brushing against Quinn's, and felt a spark of electricity at the contact. She forced herself to focus on the papers. "You are right," she breathed. "And look at the date on the promissory note. It says June 15th, 1877. But here," she pulled out a ledger, "my father's records show he was in Denver that entire month buying breeding stock. He could not have signed anything in North Platte on that date." "That is good," Quinn said, his voice filled with excitement. "That is real proof. But we need more. We need to prove the railway company knew it was a forgery, that they are deliberately trying to defraud you." They worked through the afternoon, barely stopping to eat. As the hours passed, Olivia found herself increasingly aware of Quinn's presence. The way he rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong forearms tanned from years in the sun. The way his brow furrowed in concentration as he studied documents. The gentle encouragement in his voice when she started to lose hope. She knew it was foolish to feel anything for a man she had just met, a drifter who would probably move on as soon as this crisis was resolved. But there was something about Quinn that called to her, a steadiness and strength that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt since her father died. As evening approached, they had compiled a substantial stack of evidence, documents and records that clearly proved the promissory note was a forgery. The question was what to do with it. "We need to get this to someone who can help," Olivia said. "But everyone in North Platte is either scared of the railway company or bought by them." "What about Lincoln?" Quinn suggested. "The territorial governor's office is there. They would have jurisdiction over something like this, and they might be harder for the railway to influence." "Lincoln is 2 days' ride," Olivia said. "We do not have that kind of time." Quinn stood and paced to the window, looking out at the darkening prairie. "Then one of us needs to go tonight. Ride hard, change horses along the way. It could be done in a day and a half if we push it." "I will go," Olivia said immediately. "No," Quinn said firmly. "You need to stay here and protect your property. If the railway men come back and find the place abandoned, they will just move in and claim it. I will go." "But if you leave, they might arrest me or force me to sign something else," Olivia protested. "I cannot defend this place alone, not against Whitmore and whoever he brings with him." They stared at each other across the room, the impossibility of the situation hanging between them. Finally, Quinn said, "Then we need help. Is there anyone at all in this area who might stand with you?" Olivia thought hard. "There is Tom Fletcher, he has the ranch to the north. He and my father were friendly, and maybe the Johnsons, they have a small homestead to the west. But they are old and they have their own problems. I cannot ask them to risk everything for me." "You might be surprised," Quinn said gently. "People will stand up for what is right if given the chance. We just need to ask them." The next morning they rode out together to visit the neighboring properties. Tom Fletcher was a grizzled man in his 50s who had been ranching in Nebraska since before Olivia was born. When they explained the situation, his face darkened with anger. "That damned railway company," he spat. "They have been trying to squeeze all of us out for years. Your father was a good man, Olivia. He stood up to them when others would not. I will help however I can." The Johnsons, an older couple who homesteaded a small farm, were more hesitant but ultimately agreed to at least come and witness any interactions with the railway men, to ensure everything was done properly and legally. By the time they returned to Olivia's ranch that afternoon, she felt the first real stirrings of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could fight this. That evening, as they were preparing dinner together in the kitchen, working in a companionable silence that felt surprisingly natural, Quinn spoke up. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," Olivia said, stirring a pot of stew on the stove. "Why is this land so important to you? I do not mean that in a critical way," he added quickly. "I understand it is your home, your heritage, but you are young, smart, capable. You could start over somewhere else, maybe somewhere easier." Olivia was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "My father used to say that land is not just dirt and grass. It is where your story is written. My mother is buried on that hill overlooking the creek. My father built this house with his own hands, and I helped him with every board and nail once I was old enough. Every fence post, every tree, every rock has a memory attached to it. This land is not just my home. It is my history, my identity. Without it, I am not sure who I would be." Quinn nodded slowly. "I understand that. I spent so many years drifting, going from place to place, never putting down roots, always telling myself I was free, that I did not need anything or anyone. But lately, I have been feeling like maybe I was wrong. Maybe freedom is not about having nothing to hold you down. Maybe it is about finding something worth staying for." Their eyes met across the small kitchen, and Olivia felt her breath catch. There was something in Quinn's gaze, a warmth and longing that mirrored the feelings growing in her own heart. Before either of them could speak, the sound of multiple horses approaching shattered the moment. They rushed to the window and saw at least a dozen riders approaching the house, led by Theodore Whitmore. With him were men wearing federal marshal badges, as well as several rough-looking hired guns. "They are not wasting any time," Quinn said grimly. He checked his revolver, then looked at Olivia. "Stay behind me. No matter what happens, do not sign anything." They stepped out onto the porch as the riders formed a semicircle in front of the house. Whitmore looked triumphant, clearly believing he had already won. "Miss Sanders," he called out, "I have here federal marshals with a warrant to seize this property pending resolution of the debt your father owed. You have two choices. Sign over the land now, and we will compensate you fairly. Refuse, and the marshals will forcibly remove you and your friend there from the premises." One of the marshals, a hard-faced man with a thick mustache, rode forward. "Miss Sanders, I am Federal Marshal Garrett. I do not want any trouble here. We have legal authority to enforce this action. Please cooperate." "Marshal," Quinn called out, "before you do anything you might regret, you should know we have evidence that the documents the railway company is using are forgeries. Miss Sanders' father could not have signed that promissory note because he was in Denver at the time it is dated. We have bank records, travel receipts, and witness statements proving it." Whitmore laughed. "More delay tactics. Marshal Garrett, do your duty." But Garrett held up a hand, looking interested despite himself. "What kind of evidence?" Quinn quickly explained what they had found, and Olivia ran inside to get the papers. As she handed them to Marshal Garrett, she saw uncertainty flicker across his face. "This does not change anything," Whitmore said, but there was an edge of panic in his voice now. "The courts will sort it out." In the meantime, the property must be secured. Actually, came a new voice, the courts have already sorted it out. Everyone turned to see a tall man in a fine suit riding up with an escort of 4 armed men. Olivia did not recognize him, but Whitmore's face went pale. "Judge Harrison," Whitmore stammered. "What are you doing here, preventing a miscarriage of justice?" Judge Harrison said crisply. He dismounted and walked directly to Olivia, tipping his hat. "Miss Sanders, I am Circuit Judge Martin Harrison. I received an urgent telegram this morning from Sheriff Morton informing me of the situation here. I have reviewed the documents he sent, and I must say, the forgery is quite evident to anyone with legal training." "That is ridiculous," Whitmore blustered. "You cannot have reviewed anything. This is a conspiracy." "What is ridiculous, Mr. Whitmore, is believing you could forge documents and intimidate a young woman into giving up her property without consequences," Judge Harrison said coldly. "I am hereby issuing a permanent injunction against the Western Railway Company, preventing any further action against Miss Sanders or her property. Furthermore, I will be launching a full investigation into the railway company's land acquisition practices throughout the territory. I suspect this is not the first time they have used such tactics." Marshal Garrett looked relieved. "That is good enough for me, Judge. Boys, mount up. We are done here." Whitmore sputtered and raged, but without the marshals backing him, there was nothing he could do. His hired guns were not about to face down federal authority, and within minutes, the entire group was riding away, leaving Olivia and Quinn standing on the porch in stunned disbelief. "I do not understand," Olivia said to Judge Harrison. "Why would Sheriff Morton help us?" "And how did you get here so fast?" Harrison smiled. "Morton's father and yours served together in the war. Despite his flaws, Morton could not quite bring himself to let your father's daughter be robbed. As for my timing, I was already in the area investigating railway company activities. Morton's telegram simply confirmed what I had already suspected." He handed her an official-looking document. "This confirms your clear and uncontested ownership of this property, Miss Sanders. Keep it safe." After Judge Harrison and his men left, Olivia and Quinn stood together in the gathering darkness, the enormity of what had just happened slowly sinking in. "It is over," Olivia whispered. "It is really over." "Yes," Quinn said softly. "You won, you kept your home." Olivia turned to face him, suddenly aware that with the crisis resolved, there was nothing keeping Quinn here anymore. He had said he was a drifter, someone who moved from place to place. He had saved her, helped her fight for her land, but she had no claim on him beyond that. "Thank you," she said, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. "I could not have done this without you. If you had not been there that first day, if you had not stood up to Whitmore, torn up those papers, I would have lost everything." Quinn looked at her for a long moment, and in the lamplight spilling from the house, she could see conflict in his eyes. "Olivia," he said, and her name on his lips sent warmth flooding through her. "I need to tell you something. I did not just happen to be passing by your ranch that day." She stared at him. "What do you mean?" "I was in town, asking about work, and I heard people talking about the railway company trying to force a woman off her land. I heard them laughing about it, saying she would never hold out, that she should just give up and accept the inevitable. Something about that, about the casual cruelty of it, made me angry. So I rode out here, thinking maybe I could help somehow." He took a step closer. "I expected to find someone who needed assistance with ranch work, maybe someone to help stand witness to legal proceedings. I did not expect to find you." "Me," Olivia whispered. "You," Quinn confirmed. "Strong, brave, smart, beautiful, fighting for what you believe in even when the whole world is against you." "Olivia, I have been drifting for 5 years, telling myself I was looking for something without ever knowing what it was. But the moment I saw you standing on that porch, refusing to back down even when you were terrified, I knew. I was looking for you. For this. A place to belong, a reason to stay, someone worth building a life with. Olivia's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Quinn, you barely know me. We have known each other for only a few days. I know, he said, and I am not asking you to make any promises or decisions right now. But I am asking if I can stay. Not just as a ranch hand, though I am happy to work for my keep, but as someone who wants to court you properly to see if what I feel, what I hope you might feel too, is real and lasting. Tears blurred Olivia's vision, but these were tears of joy. Yes, she said. Yes, please stay. Because I do feel it too, Quinn. I feel like I have been waiting for you without even knowing it. These past few days, working beside you, fighting beside you, it has felt right in a way nothing has felt since my father died. Like I am not alone anymore. Like I am finally home, not just in my house but in my heart. Quinn closed the distance between them and cupped her face gently in his hands. May I kiss you? He asked softly. Yes, Olivia breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and sweet and full of promise. The kiss was everything a first kiss should be, tender and exploratory, a question and an answer all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. So, Quinn said, his voice slightly unsteady, I suppose this means I am officially employed as your ranch hand. Olivia laughed, a sound of pure happiness that rang out across the prairie. I suppose it does, though I should warn you I am a demanding boss. I would not have it any other way, Quinn said and kissed her again. Over the following months, Quinn proved to be everything Olivia could have hoped for in a partner. He worked tirelessly on the ranch, repairing fences, managing the cattle, and helping her prepare for the coming winter. But more than that, he treated her with respect and affection that grew deeper with each passing day. They worked side by side during the long days, and in the evenings, they would sit on the porch together, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's histories, hopes, and dreams. Quinn told her about his childhood in Colorado, how he had lost his own family to cholera when he was 19, and how he had spent the years since then running from the pain of that loss. Olivia shared memories of her parents, the joy and sorrow that had shaped her into the woman she had become. As autumn painted the prairie in golds and reds, Quinn asked Olivia to marry him, presenting her with a simple gold band he had ridden all the way to Lincoln to purchase. They were married in November in a small ceremony at the North Platte Church, with Tom Fletcher and the Johnsons and half the town in attendance. Even Sheriff Morton came, looking sheepish but pleased. Their wedding night was sweet and tender, both of them nervous and eager, learning each other in the most intimate way possible. Olivia had never felt so cherished, so loved as she did in Quinn's arms. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. The ranch demanded constant work, and there were still occasional attempts by the railway company to cause trouble, though Judge Harrison's investigation had severely curtailed their more aggressive tactics. But Olivia and Quinn faced everything together, their bond growing stronger with each obstacle they overcame. In the spring of 1884, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. Quinn was overjoyed, though terrified, fussing over her constantly and insisting she take it easy. Olivia found his concern endearing, even when it drove her a little crazy. Their son was born in December, a healthy baby boy with his father's hazel eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Thomas after Olivia's father, and Quinn held his son with tears streaming down his face, overcome with love and gratitude for the family he had found. As Thomas grew, the ranch prospered. Quinn proved to have a gift for breeding cattle, and their herd became known throughout Nebraska for its quality. They hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work, young men who Quinn trained with the same patience and care his own father had shown him. 3 years after Thomas, they welcomed a daughter they named Rose, who had her mother's fierce spirit and her father's easy smile. The house that had felt so empty after Olivia's father died was now filled with laughter and love, with the sounds of children playing and a couple who had found in each other everything they had ever needed. On a warm evening in June 1889, 7 years after that fateful day when Quinn had torn up the railway company's papers and changed both their lives forever, Olivia and Quinn sat on their porch watching Thomas chase Rose through the yard while the sun set over their land. Quinn had his arm around Olivia and she leaned into his warmth, feeling perfectly content. "You ever regret it?" Olivia asked quietly. "Giving up your freedom, settling down here?" Quinn looked at her with surprise. "Regret it?" "Olivia, marrying you and building this life together is the best thing I have ever done. I was not free before I met you. I was lost. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me everything." "You gave me the same," Olivia said, reaching up to kiss him. "You saved me, Quinn. Not just from the railway company, but from a life of loneliness and struggle. You showed me what it means to have a true partner, someone who stands beside you no matter what." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their children play, grateful for every moment of the life they had built together. The land Olivia's father had claimed and cultivated, the home he had built with his own hands, now belonged to a new generation. But it was more than just land and buildings now. It was where love had taken root and flourished, where 2 lost souls had found each other and created something beautiful. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Thomas and Rose came running up to the porch, demanding bedtime stories. Quinn scooped them both up, one in each arm, and carried them inside with Olivia following behind, her heart full to overflowing. The railway company never bothered them again. Judge Harrison's investigation had exposed so much corruption that the Western Railway Company was eventually dissolved, its assets seized and redistributed. Theodore Whitmore spent several years in federal prison for fraud and forgery. As the years passed, the Dalton Ranch became one of the most successful in Nebraska. Thomas grew up to be a fine rancher like his father, eventually taking over the day-to-day operations. Rose, true to her spirited nature, became a teacher in North Platte, educating the children of the growing town. Quinn and Olivia grew old together on the land they loved, their hair turning silver, their hands becoming weathered from years of work. But their love never diminished, never faded. Every morning, Quinn would wake before dawn and bring Olivia coffee in bed, and every evening they would sit together on the porch, watching the sun set over their prairie home. On their 30th wedding anniversary, surrounded by their children and 5 grandchildren, Quinn took Olivia's hand and said, "You know, I still remember that first moment I saw you, standing on this very porch, refusing to back down from men who wanted to take everything from you. I fell in love with you right then, though I did not realize it at the time. Every day since has only made me love you more." Olivia, her eyes bright with happy tears, squeezed his hand. "And I remember a cowboy who rode into my life at exactly the right moment, who tore up papers meant to steal my future and gave me a better future than I could have ever imagined. You are my hero, Quinn Dalton. You always will be." They kissed, to the delighted applause of their family. And as the celebration continued around them, they held each other close, grateful for every moment, every struggle, every triumph that had brought them to this perfect place. The land that Olivia's father had claimed in the wild days of the Nebraska frontier remained in the family for generations, passed down from parent to child, each generation adding their own chapter to its story. But the heart of that story, the foundation upon which everything else was built, was always the same. It was the story of a woman who refused to give up, and a cowboy who stood between her and those who would do her harm, who tore up the papers meant to steal her legacy, and in doing so, found his own. It was a story of courage and love, of standing up for what is right even when the odds seem impossible, of finding home not in a place but in another person's heart. And it was a story that, in the Wild West of 1882, was just beginning, though neither Olivia nor Quinn knew it as they stood together on that fateful day. But they lived it, every moment of it, with joy and gratitude and love that never wavered. And in the end, that was all that mattered. They had each other, they had their family, they had their land, and they had a love story that would be told and retold by their descendants for generations to come. The ranch house still stands today, carefully preserved by the family, a testament to what can be built when two people refuse to give up, when they stand together against the world and fight for what they believe in. The creek still runs through the eastern pasture, the same water that the railway company once tried to steal, now nourishing cattle and crops and the dreams of a new generation. And on quiet evenings, when the wind whispers across the prairie grass, some say you can still hear the echo of laughter from that porch, the sound of two souls who found each other in the Wild West and built something that time itself could not diminish. It is the sound of true love, of home, of a story that ended exactly as it should have ended, with happiness and hope and a future full of promise stretching out before them like the endless Nebraska sky.